I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. I'd like to thank Ahrefs for sponsoring this episode. Confessions is a short-form chat about SEO, and not from the conventional viewpoint, more from probably a bleeding edge for the purpose of encouraging critical thought instead of FOMO. Today's topic danced a little closer to the edge than initially planned, but it is where it took me. So hope you both enjoy and are challenged just enough by the next 15 minutes. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 28 of Confessions of an SEO Mountain Edition 2025. Now, last week I shared my somewhat contrarian preference for launching tests into the storm. And by storm, I mean the current update. And I think during updates is as great a time as ever just to be brave and launch. Clients aren't that keen, but these days I worry less about their anxieties. You can always find the most recent episode on confessionsofanseo.com, and your subscribing to Confessions on your favorite podcast platform helps convince me to keep going. Thank you again to Ahrefs as the sponsor of today's show. Ahrefs' marketing platform contains webmaster tools, which are free with a verified ownership of your website. Now, within Webmaster Tools, there's a feature, Web Analytics, and that provides insights about your website's traffic, data, visitors, sources of that traffic, and in real time, so you can analyze who's coming into your website. Ahrefs is a privacy-focused alternative to Google Analytics. No cookies by default, no personal data collected, a simple interface showing only the essential metrics: top traffic sources, top pages, traffic locations, browser clients, historical performance graphs to track multiple metrics, including traffic from LLMs. It is both lightweight on the site and easy to install. And again, Ahrefs is free to get started analyzing the traffic on your website. The nature of the current core update shifted for me as I constantly review indexing and serving data. Those are two different animals, and the sooner we as a community stop making them equivalents of each other, the sooner the ability for us to more easily evaluate actual issues. Now, sometimes I see things, they pop out, and there's no apparent significance. And yet, they haunt me through the day, and sometimes at 3 a.m. I know. But more often than not, it turns out to be something, which is, I think, why there's a part of me that pays attention to it. So I know I'm gnawing on something that's going to require some really organized study, much like they say measure twice, cut once. I'm writing out my questions and coming up with what kind of data do I need and require to ascertain either, is this a signal, or maybe it helps me come up with the next question. Nerd alert. Now that SEO as we know it is going to hell in a handbasket, indexing appears now to be more important than ever. There are AI that don't render JavaScript on sites. I'm assuming you know what that means, but just in case, if they don't render that JavaScript, they don't see jack of whatever content you have in that JavaScript. You want your site to run fast, so you pop it into JavaScript. But in the world of AI overlays, you may want to reconsider that. That may be a choice point for you now. I was having a delightful conversation with a colleague who's been in SEO for longer than I have. And we started talking about, the need really to adjust with the AI times. He was saying, what really blows is that not only has 20 years of knowledge and experience appeared to evaporated, but AI is evolving right in front of our eyes. And if I could only spend the next 6 months totally figuring that out without having to do any work, I have no doubt that I would find what works, and then AI would just change like that, and I'd be right back to where I am now. Damn you, OpenAI. Okay, so not being one to cry over spilled milk, I started to wonder how all of these things connect. Not that Google runs the world or anything, but looking at these, these updates, like, all right, helpful content. I know I've given you a little break on that topic lately, but events as they are made me start to wonder, now that we know what it measures, what problem did helpful content solve? Now, I wanted to explore what problem was so pressing that they had to eliminate. Their goal was to eliminate over 40% of what they had in their index. For regular listeners, you know I'm not about to spill out the public reason we were giving. I look at what happened and then I play around with alternate explanations that make sense and explain it to myself, but with non-Google corporate speak. First, we know there are costs to everything, and there is certainly a cost to maintaining those 400 billion documents in their index. Now, we only kind of learned the scale of their index really during the DOJ trial. We know that's not an exact number. Google doesn't want to really say how much they're dealing with. And during the course of that trial, they had to kind of come up with some number. So it's most likely a valid ballpark figure. We know they don't just have to keep a copy of every page. They keep the latest 20 copies or 20 versions of each page. So all those changes that we make, Google doesn't just sort of poof them out. It just pushes them back into sort of like a little section. We might call it a cache. I don't know what they call it. I'm sure they have a name for it. And all of this, we learned from the Google API documentation link last year. They discover pages they've admitted in the trillions, that they crawl but never, ever, ever make it into their index. And just doing that costs. How many sites bear the weight of these 400 billion documents? Gary Illis shed some light on this topic on Google's own podcast, Search Off the Record. And he revealed that every day, Google checks the robot's text record of 4 billion host names. That's why in server logs, even if you don't have a robot's text file on your site, they do come looking for it. Not because you told them it was there, but because the crawling system learns where a domain is registered. And out the door, they send that little bot with a note, sort of, if you can imagine, safely pinned to their little tiny shirt with that file name on it. Thank you, crawl or no crawl indexation research. When I first learned server logs weren't just for developers, SEOs could really get a lot out of them. I was at a conference and a developer spoke about how new domains get Googlebot crawls on them without really being asked, specifically the homepage, multiple times a day and couldn't figure out why. I use this to illustrate that all these conditions, how much they have and how they're managing it, how they even discover it in the first place, all contribute to potential issues. Does anything in there point to a possible list of problems that helpful content solve? Well, 400 billion documents, that's a lot of things to keep track of. We can extrapolate that we know the expense, there's space requirements, electricity, computational power, all the people it takes to keep it going. It could be that, a downward pressure on expenses. Every business understands that. But here's what's intriguing to me. Google decided to lessen the number of documents they maintain through topical means on a domain level. Why create a separate set of rules, which I'm sure cost them a pretty penny, instead of creating a filter, let's say between the indexation and serving systems? They could have handled it that way. I know I'm Monday morning quarterbacking, but it's fun. So do we see signs that, like us, when we create pages on our websites, we feel a little proprietary about our content, aka our house? Google creates all their result pages to monetize them. Aren't those pages kind of Google's website? And wouldn't it be easy for Google to start to view that as their content, their house? Yes, it's our content on their site. And I've talked about this in an earlier episode this year. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is no longer negotiable. So that's episode 22. Is it that far-fetched for one of the largest corporations in the world to view these pages as completely their property? And then when AI comes along, you probably see where I'm headed with this. Before we knew there was such a thing as AI, really understood it as a larger group, Google knew and likely gamed out some possible scenarios. like they said after they did when OpenAI kind of ambushed them by releasing ChatGPT, the landscape with AI could have three possible outcomes, as Google saw it. Nothing changes and search remains safe. And then everything changes in search, but people use our AI, which is Gemini. Or everything changes in search, but people use ChatGPT, which is OpenAI, in which Microsoft is a majority investor and partner. Looking at the tension between these things, the costs of creating, building, and retaining Google's index against the challenge of training a flagship LLM to keep people on a Google product, it makes helpful content seem a little more self-serving. Like they did it for a potentially very specific reason. If you know, say, this list of domains contains content on this topic, and we've cleaned up our index and removed all the, quote, unhelpful, unquote, content or off-topic content in more plain language, so we have confidence that we can train our AI on these domains, well, then we, as Google, have created a win-win. Less costs to manage, less costs to train. And at a scale of 400 billion pages on approximately 4 billion sites, no wonder they were thrilled at the outcome in April 2024 when they discovered they'd reduced not 40% of their index that they were targeting, but 45% of their index. Now, they called it low-quality, unoriginal content in search results. Call it anything. What it might have, what it was, we didn't know. Like, they didn't come out and specifically say this, and that's what my analysis found. So that if we didn't know what was going on, we really couldn't effectively manipulate any type of approach to what the AI training was doing. Now we can, but at that time, we spent a lot of time talking about what helpful content really wasn't. While all that was going on, there were a lot of people where they didn't know what hit them. More were stuck in a keyword phrase content creation. The more observant kind of moved into question and answer short form. Until we knew what helpful content measured, we really couldn't have suspected this possible explanation. I don't want to be an alarmist because, frankly, it's too late for that. We're in an industry where clients not only just take the wheel, we allow them to take the wheel. And we're doing it all for the same reason Google chose the path it did. They didn't want to lose business. We're still in the influence results business. And maybe kind of our targets have shifted. How we do it may be modified, but at the same time, clients are not shifting their expectations as quickly. It's like, I definitely want to be suggested in these AI overlays. Why don't you already have that done? Oh, by the way, why have my clicks gone down? Where's my traffic gone? Hey, I'm so frustrated. If I can search in ChatGPT for optimization suggestions on my page, why am I paying you thousands of dollars? Meanwhile, there is great opportunity on some of the more unsexy aspects in SEO that will lead to more businesses getting into those generated summaries above the search results. And on the other side, like years ago, when in local maps, there used to be 10 businesses, and then it got reduced to 3, the math may not work out on the organic side of that equation. We survived that map reduction because the location of the searcher leveled the playing field. In this, we don't know yet what the impact to businesses it's going to have to move into this new query model. So instead of getting 10 links, we're now looking at the suggested links and the overlays, typically around 3 businesses. Sounds similar, huh? Well, this is a huge educational opportunity, but it's not the one I think most people or most businesses may be ready for. Pretty exciting times. That's it for me this week. Thank you for being a listener. If you have questions about today's topic, you can reach out and text 2 Confessions at 512-222-3132. Thank you again to Ahrefs Marketing Platform for being the sponsor of this episode. Check out the link in the description and get free access to their webmaster tools. Indexilla is my search engine discovery tool designed to get your pages found and indexed without relying on things that no longer work. You can find it at indexzilla.io. My indexation research project, Crawl or No Crawl, continues. If you're a sustaining member at $18 a month, you'll receive status reports to answer the question, is it me or is indexing off today? Thank you for listening, and until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.